Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod. Alan Quinlan and myself, both at home but working as ever, particularly you, Al. I'd say you've talked about this game till the cows come home. But we must touch straight away Ireland, New Zealand, Saturday night in Chicago, 26 points to 13. The game was very much in the balance for the first 55 minutes. If anything, Ireland were actually slightly the better, I would have thought, but then disappointing the way it fell away, Al, into defeat.
Yeah, I think it was a very pleasing start by Ireland, having to deal with the red card for Tadhg Beirne. They managed the game well and went 10-0 up, got a penalty, and then the Tadhg Furlong try was an excellent score, and I think they were starting to find little inroads. Their ruck was very efficient, and their overall shape was good, so they certainly started the game well. And New Zealand came back, and when it's 10-0, they score a try. I think it's a brilliant kind of counter attack from Lester Fainga'anuku, and he goes outside Gary Ringrose, and then there's trouble. Will Jordan is on his shoulder, gets an offload to him, and a couple of passes, and Ardy Sevilla's in the corner. That was a bit of a hammer blow because they hadn't really threatened that much. And there's an argument here, Stuart. I don't know if what the New Zealand take on their performance is, but I'd say they would have been disappointed with the way that first half went. They never really kind of got any sort of territory or pressure. Were putting Ireland. They never really looked like scoring other than that try that they got. And I think when you play any New Zealand team, there's always going to be a possibility of those kind of tries. If they get in behind you at all, they're probably the best team, and historically been the best team at punishing you when they get in behind you or someone makes a line break. Their anticipation, their support play is excellent. And so I think Ireland going in 10-7 at half time. Quite pleased, I think, given the concerns about lack of match practice and having not played together this group since the Italy game in the Six Nations. So a lot of talk about them being undercooked, not having many minutes on the clock, individuals and collectively. And so I think a lot of stuff was really positive in that first half, but unfortunately, from an Irish point of view, they couldn't sustain that. And a couple of crucial things that happened in the game, and I think Ireland are on the attack. Jamie Osborne runs a good line, little pop pass from Jack Crowley. It goes on the floor. They hack it up the field. Crowley gets back to tidy up, and you think it's difficult for him to get the kick away. It's probably easier to think it might have happened. You have to do it in a split second if you're going to kick it. He took a couple of seconds to kind of realize who was in front of him, and got tackled and then turned over. Quint Tupaia did brilliantly to get a penalty, and that was a crucial stage because I think at 13-7, and Ireland got that penalty in the second half to go 6 points clear. I think one more score for Ireland. And people maybe think I'm crazy to say that, but the momentum really swung when New Zealand got that penalty. They kicked down the touchline, and Tamati Williams scores. They go 14-7 up. And
do you think rugby can be broken down as simple as that, Alan? You in studio, it's quite comfortable. But did you feel New Zealand would always have a 15-minute spell?
Well, yeah, they're always going to have a spell.
Ireland, or did you think actually Ireland are holding their own here, and if they do get the next score, they'll go on and win the game? But then when you come out half an hour later, they've got beaten by a couple of tries.
But they deserve to win the game. When you get to you're scoring 4 tries in a game, so to Ireland's 1. But I think at that point, at 55, 60 minutes, that try went in. You're thinking just before that, even if Jamie Osborne holds on to the ball and Ireland build a little bit more pressure there, and they may get a penalty, they're not back under their own post like what ended up a kind of minute or two later from brilliant work by Tupaia at the breakdown to turn Jack Crowley over and win a penalty. And Yeah, it's not that simple, but I think it's kind of it's momentum. It's a very much a momentum game. They're the one team that can go, not the only team. I think if anyone gets opportunities back in their defensive 22 to run the ball out, of course, there's lots of teams can go the length of the field and score. And but New Zealand are a team that seem to do it more than others, and they're kind of used to that from Super Rugby, and it's in their DNA to strike. If there's any sort of little chink in the armor or opportunity in the defensive line, they'll go after it, and they seem to have players that can do that. So,
They have
you know,
game breakers,
obviously,
which Ireland don't have. It's
yeah, and obviously
that's as simple as that, isn't it?
they had to muscle up for that try from Timothy Williams, and it's a soft one. It's two rucks. It's Wallace Satiti gets stopped short, and there's a little pop pass off from Cody Taylor, but he burst through Satiti, who's a brilliant player, and then one pick and go, and it's a try. So there's all the four tries Ireland can say be unhappy and be frustrated with the defence. But they seem to get those kind of tries, and they have an ability to do that. They have those kind of elusive players, and that's what Fainga Anuku does for the first try, doesn't he? And then it's their anticipation and their support play. So straight away, Will Jordan is on the shoulder, hungry for the ball, really quick, gets away. You know, the Williams try is the second one. The third try then by Wallace Satiti is a fractured Ireland defence. Yeah, it's a fractured Ireland defence where James Lowe and Gary Ringrose are really in no man's land. Barrett hesitates a little bit. He sees that gap, goes on a little side angle, and just leaves a little soft pass there for Mackenzie, who runs a brilliant line. Then you're in behind. Satiti's running the inside track, and he scores, and that's the game. That's essentially the game. And ultimately, the last 12 minutes of the game, they had 88% possession. So you think that you would expect maybe that even after the third try that Ireland will be battered and might get a consolation score, but they actually couldn't even get hold of the ball, and they started to make lots of mistakes, and that has to be fatigue, mental fatigue, physical fatigue. And you know, New Zealand are the ones finishing that it could have been a fifth try. It was a forward pass, game was blown up. So best team won. Frustrating from Ireland, and they were definitely undercooked and underprepared, which it's the hand Andy Farrell is dealt. And I admire and respect the fact that they weren't even, you know, they were kind of not using this in any way going into the fixture, making any excuses beforehand, and they didn't afterwards either. But it's just a reality and a fact that you're playing a team who were able to find that muscle memory for those last 20 minutes, and they were excellent.
Two big things that I want to look at, specifically the line out, but also no line breaks on in what, 7 or 8 years for Ireland.
Yeah, well,
yes, we can take that in different ways, but it's not ideal at all. Yeah,
the stats will the line breaks. The stats didn't come out for another night. They're the kind of the stats are saying there's two in there, one from James Lowe and one from Jack Conan, but they weren't clear.
They weren't clear.
Yeah, they weren't clear, like getting into space and getting in behind. Yeah, so there weren't any clear cut stuff there. So yes,
how concerning is that for you?
Pardon?
How concerning is that?
Look, I think
like in a game of 80 minutes, you probably should be making a line break or two. Fact.
Yeah, but the problem is you're playing against a very strong opponent whose defense improved a lot in the second half. They didn't overcommit at the breakdown. They got their spacing right and lots of player numbers out in that defensive line. I thought Ireland should have actually, you know, worked the short side a little bit like they did a few times in the first half. And concerning is well, if it's after 4 or 5 games, it'd be very concerning, or 3 games. But the fact that they haven't played together, I think it's hard to replicate that stuff in training and work on that. You kind of look back in a video and you see some space. I think Ireland tried to find some space in behind that defensive line. Jack Crowley put a couple of kicks in over the top and a grubber. I think about 3 kicks that didn't give any return for Ireland. So they just couldn't break them down, and their breakdown started to be affected and got punished a few times and just turned the ball over. So concerning, yes, of course, but not overly concerned. I think It's a cohesiveness thing, Stuart, and there's a fair bit of scrutiny in this team. There's a fair bit of expectation, but it was the same as last November. I think they have to find some bit of sparkle for the rest of the tournament and try and, I suppose if you're in a situation here and you've many changes, made lots of changes, and you've loads of new guys, which we don't historically do, and I don't think historically we can do it either, then that's a different story. But yeah, they've got to dust themselves down, and in some ways they'd be better if they were playing Australia next week, not Japan, because he has to give some players game time against Japan. But look, they've got to go back, dust themselves down, and try and learn and improve that. And again,
What about the line out? What about the line out?
Yeah, it's frustrating. I think
It's
from their
gone for
own
a
point of
while,
view.
hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think the games that we've suffered in and lost in the last couple of years, there's always been a number of lineouts that have gone awry. And New Zealand World
Simple
Cup in
calls,
France.
predictability. You've been in there a lot in your time.
Yeah, and it's a bit of leadership too from them, from players, and identification. And I don't think we have any world-class line-out operators. And in that, I mean a kind of an Alan Wynne-Jones, a Paul O'Connell, a Victor Matfield, these type of guys who run a line-out brilliantly. Yeah, and just are obsessed with that's a big strength in their game. But look, it's difficult to have that type of characters in some teams, but they don't grow on trees. Victor Matfields or Paul O'Connell's, but Paul is coaching them, and I'm sure he's kind of frustrated as well with some of the execution that's happening there. So again, there's always a possibility you lose a few, but I think in the games that Ireland have lost, I think there's been lineouts in there that have gone awry. It's good pressure from New Zealand. The positive on the lineouts, defensively, Ireland were quite good, and they stole a few
they nicked a few, didn't they? Baird stole a few.
They stole a few on New Zealand. So if you want to, just going back to your attack question, if you want to have start your attack and build your attack, a lot of the time it comes from the set piece, doesn't it? Scrum and lineout, and 5 opportunities gone a begging there for Ireland to launch attacks off. So who knows what happens if they win those lineouts clean. And the lineouts they won, look, it's probably a nitpicking. They're winning a good few with Ryan Baird at the front. It's much more difficult now in the modern game to win middle back and have a lovely crisp clean ball to spin out your back line. So I'm not saying it's easy, but it was a factor again the other night. And it was a factor in the game last November. It was a factor in the 2023 loss of the World Cup to New Zealand, particularly one Ireland had on the halfway line and they lost it. And again, Ardy Sevilla scores at the other end of the field a couple of minutes later, and it came off the back of that. So if Ireland win that line out, Ardy Sevilla is not scoring 90 seconds later in the opposite corner. And that's the fact. It's a 7-pointer. Ireland lost by 4. Yeah. So there's a prime example. I'm not saying, of course it can happen, but I think it's in these games that Ireland have lost. Of course, there's been other things too, other factors, and that's the same for every team. We'll analyze it. But I'm just nervous, and it was unfortunately that was the case again the other night. But look, it's early days, and I don't think you can be overcritical. I think their effort level was good. They did a lot of good things in the game. Their context and their physical presence was really good. I
was going to say that. Let's spin it round and look at a few positives. McCluskey.
Yeah, McCluskey was outstanding. McCarthy. Yeah, Paddy McCarthy and Gibson Park was outstanding.
Did you like out there, and
I thought Jack Crowley did really well.
Okay.
Crowley did really well in the first half, made mistakes in the second half, and that's the frustrating part from his performance, because he looked like he looked really assured out there.
This afternoon?
Probably a 6 or a 7. I think you can't be overcritical again. You're handling the ball a lot, and he did really well in that first half. But yeah, I think if 1 or 2 of those little grubber kicks or those chip kicks in behind comes off, if one of them comes off, and Tommy O'Brien nearly got on the end of one. It was a fingertips job, but that's good defence. They're so quick to get back and defend and scramble New Zealand, so they don't make it easy for you.
They
So
probably
yeah, the
didn't get
positive.
O'Brien in as much into the game as they wanted.
Pardon?
They probably didn't quite get Tommy O'Brien
Yeah, of course.
with the
Yeah,
ball
Tommy
hands as
O'Brien,
much as they would have
because
wanted.
we talk about pace and having out and out pace, and he has it. And I think he handled the ball 3 times in the game and didn't really get any opportunity to run it at his opposite number. And yeah, that was disappointing because you can imagine if you build 15, 20, 25 phases, which this team were doing in 22 and 23, to have someone like Tommy O'Brien being on the end of that stuff with fatigue and defensive lines fractured, you think he's going to cause problems. But look, again, they've got to try and build on it. It's Andy Farrell, in fairness to him, wasn't making any excuses, and I think they can be better. They did a lot of good stuff, for 60 minutes, and I was genuinely quite relaxed and thinking I did say at half time that I expected a bit of a backlash and that we would have to withstand some pressure. I just think whatever about the Williams try, that stuff can happen. I just think we made it easy for him with the Satiti try, and New Zealand were throwing caution to the wind there. And to be fair to them, you have to give them massive credit for their mental strength. They go 14-13 up, and they're not sitting back, kind of managing the game. They're going for it. They're going for that next try, and the door was open for Bowden Barrett and Damien McKenzie, and they're two players that are going to go right through that. And that was the game, really, because I thought from the drop off at 14-13, I think Ireland are capable of getting a penalty here and going back ahead and dogging it out here. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. But you have to give credit to New Zealand. And again, I think you just cannot hide away from the fact that this team haven't played for a long time. And that was a factor in the last 20 minutes.
So they'll return home now on Japan at the weekend. I suspect a few of these guys will get another opportunity, or also, do you see a lot of fresh faces? That's a difficult one, isn't it?
It's
Because you
probably a
want to have
half and
some
half.
combinations, but then
Look,
you've got to maybe play Crowley again, don't you, to give him his fair
you could
opportunity?
look, it could be a half and half scenario. I don't know. You make 12, 13 changes here, and you're kind of starting from scratch then. And in some ways,
They
you need
probably
a bit
don't
of.
want that either. They probably want
Well,
a
I
bit
don't
of
know. I think for me, it's look, it's you are trying to manage the
familiarity.
minutes, and I think if you make a few changes, but try and get game time and under some people's belts. Other players, they're all different here, and they'll be all monitored after the weekend and would have been monitored during the game. So I think you've got to make some changes and keep a few guys who maybe need that match sharpness for the following week against Australia. But look, I don't think you can play Jack Crowley 4 weeks in a row, and I think you know Sam Prendergast probably deserves a shot to go out and try and lift his confidence as well, and see
That
what he
seems to
can
be
do.
pretty low, Al, even when he come on.
Yeah, when he came on, he looked yeah, he didn't
A
look
bit rushed for him
himself.
and things, didn't he?
Yeah, he
Didn't the
was. Yeah. But it was a difficult
normal
time
Sam
for anyone to
Prendergast
come on
posture.
like that. It was a difficult time for anyone to come on there, but he didn't look great. And, it was far from perfect for any of the players. I think Ryan Baird was good, McCluskey was good, Tyke Furlong was really good in that first half. So, look, there was plenty of positives there, but, if you can get Caelan Doris back and get some minutes under his belt, it's a positive. And they've got to try and believe now and get through a tricky Japan side, which they should do, and you get a result against Australia then, which is achievable. And I mean that respectfully. Australia are a very dangerous side if they're allowed play, but South Africa then could cause Ireland all sorts of problems unless they up their performance and up the ante, which I expect they will. Either way, both those games are very difficult, Australia and South Africa. But yeah, it's early part of the season, and they definitely showed a fair bit of rustiness in the last 20 minutes of last night.
Just finishing up, as you talked about those other matches, say the obvious, there's a big difference between 1 out of 4 victories and 3 out of 4. And if it was the first thing, surely 2 years down the line to a World Cup, you would start to be thinking, oh, have we got this right? But then if you win 3 out of 4, it's like, oh, we're still on track, okay.
Yeah, no matter what team you have, Stuart, Australia and South Africa are going to be very tricky. Um,
But at home, they should beat Australia.
yeah, they
No?
should, but it's not a given at any stage. I think they've gone very close a few times, but yeah, you'd be disappointed if you didn't get a result. And I think there will be, some the questions and the pressure heaps on everybody if they don't get those results, or at least win one of them, and you know be involved in producing a really good performance against South Africa. South Africa are at a level at the moment that can blow teams away if they get in their groove, and they showed that with the result in New Zealand, the second rugby championship match. So, look, I think one step at a time. They've got to get through Japan, and minimum is trying to get a 50% return. Look, even winning 3 out of 4. If you end up at the end and you got a result against South Africa and Australia and you won 3 out of 4, well, I think you start to.
That's a big enough tick, isn't it?
Yeah, and you really kind of go, well, yeah, sure, look, the game they did well for 60 minutes against New Zealand, and you're more positive. But if they lose those games, of course there's going to be question marks, particularly with with 2 years time and the World Cup and ahead. But look, that's sport. You never know. Even if they don't get the results here, it doesn't mean that everybody should be chopped and moved on. But if that happens, there'll have to be some reinvigorating
No one will
and
be
and
chopped down unless
and
it's me
some
and you.
a few fresh faces. Yeah.
Well, as you say, Australia do normally like playing Ireland and give a good account of themselves. Alan, we'll chat to you more either this week or next week. Thanks as always.
Okay. Cheers, Stuart.